When you think about the visual system, it's probably one of the biggest sensory systems of the brain. So if you think in an environment, if we were to close our eyes, it would be very hard for us to learn, gain experience. So about 80% of the information is visual in the classroom, in the workforce. So we have to make sure that there's no sensory obstacles to learning. And 20% is auditory, so we have to always make sure that the hearing is up to scratch, because again, we don't want sensory obstacles to learning or in the environment. So people have to have good distance vision, they have to have good near vision, they have to be able to change their focus from near to far, they have to be able to look, copy, listen and write. They're just some of the skills that we need, and the visual system needs to be working optimally for us to manage in the environment. So this is sort of, I guess, a growth diagram about the environment. So we get input, so in a classroom it might be, I've got to look at the board. That information goes to the eyeballs. So we assess the eyeballs, so to speak, to check that functionally they're working well. Are we seeing well for distance? Are we seeing well for close-up? Are our muscles working? Can we focus? Are we able to do all the things we're meant to do, just so that we can see well? And then the eyes are not just by themselves, they're connected. So if I were to pretend that this is one eye and this is the other eye, they're connected by an optic nerve that crosses over here. And this is in the middle of the brain, and then it goes through optic radiations and ends up in the back of the brain, the occipital lobe, and that's where, so all along that pathway there's visual processing that interprets visual spatial skills, eye motor skills. So there's a whole lot of complicated pathways that go on that impact on how we perceive things visually. So as we mentioned before, there's a stimulus, and people react to the stimulus. The same thing with visual. We have to make sure that visually everything is working well, it's perceived well, and we're maximising output. So it might be, look at that board and you've got to copy something, or in a workplace it might be, I'm going to tell you some instructions. You go to there, get the package, and then put that in appropriately. So we have to make sure that all these skills are there for the person to be able to manage with what their task is that they're needed to do. So I'll talk a bit about the functional assessment. So this is probably the bread and butter of optometry, and not every optometrist perhaps would do absolutely everything. So probably the minimum in an optometric examination would be, how well do you see for far away? And we might have a measure like say 6/6 or 6/12. So for example, for driving you have to have 6/12 vision. Can they see fine detail for far away? And then we measure the prescription or refraction. So are people long-sighted, short-sighted, or do they have astigmatism? So long-sighted theoretically is they can see for far away, but they may have trouble with close-up. They have to focus and it's a bit blurry. Short-sighted would be, it's blurry for far away, but they can see at short distances, so that's clear. And astigmatism is a sort of a football shape of the eye instead of a soccer ball shape of the eye, so it's more curved in one direction than the other. So I might put it to you, out of those three things, so short-sighted you can see short distances, long-sighted you can see long distances, and astigmatism, which is a football shape of the eye, we'll get a hands up, which one would affect learning the most? So hands up, short-sighted would affect learning the most. Hands up, long-sighted would affect learning the most. Hands up, astigmatism would affect. So in fact, short-sighted people usually are sort of the more academic people. It used to be more bookish people, so people who like to read under covers with a book, that can trigger the short-sighted gene to turn on. So short-sighted people tend to be more academic, but in fact long-sightedness, which is you can see far away but you have trouble with near work, really affects learning a lot. And in the Fragile X population, it can really impact with them with avoidant behaviour with close work. So we have to make sure that that's not one of the obstacles to learning in the classroom or in the work environment. we look at what's called accommodation or focusing. So I'm going to get everybody to pop your thumb about arm's length away and keep it clear. Now I'm going to get you to bring it in towards your nose and then stop when it starts getting a little bit blurry. Okay, you need glasses for close up. Okay, so theoretically we want that within 10 centimetres. As we get older, there's a normal focusing problem from about the age of 40, where we start needing a little bit of extra help with focusing up close, but a lot of children have problems with focusing. Sometimes it's excessive close work with the iPhone that can cause focusing problems. Sometimes it's a neurological issue. So we want to make sure that that's working really well in the classroom. Convergence, so that's how well your eyes turn in. Also, you need that for good reading, good near skills. So let's do the same thing, but this time bring it in towards your nose and then tell me when your thumb, which is 1, becomes 2, when it goes double. Oh, most people are pretty good. Oh, Bev, you need to see me. So it should be within 10 centimetres. It should be that we should be able to keep it clear and single, so my eyes are turning in, converging, within 10 centimetres. Some kids and adults have trouble with that. Their eye muscles don't want to turn in. They really want to turn out and they have trouble with that. So we would do exercises or games or sometimes glasses if they can't manage those games to try and help them see better up close because their eyes don't want to turn in. Sometimes they think seeing double is normal and that's not such a good thing. We also look at binocular vision, so both eyes working well together as a team. We look at eye movement skills. Do they work well in all directions of gaze? Are they getting any double vision? Is the eye turning in or out or up or down in any positions of gaze? Do they have good depth perception? So depth perception, you need 2 eyes to see depth perception. So when you go to, you see a painting, that's called monocular cues. So people, it looks like the train tracks are getting further away because they're getting narrower. But that's monocular depth perception. Real depth perception is 2 eyes. So I'm going to get people to pair up now. So choose a partner and one person will put one finger in front of the other, like that, in front of the other person. So I'll get you to do that. And maybe put them about a foot apart. Okay, so the other person, so only one person is doing it. The other person is looking at the front finger of the other person. And now the person who is looking just with their finger is going to touch the very front finger from the top down. Yep. And now, once you've done it, and now you're going to do the same thing with the back finger. You're going to touch the top down. Good. Okay. Now the same, exactly the same position. Now close, the person who was doing that, close one eye. And now do the same thing. Touch the front finger. Oh. So that's a little bit harder. So 1 and 2. Okay. All right, and now you guys will do a swap. So swap and do that again. The other person, both eyes open, touch the front finger from... Yep. And now then do it just with one eye. Okay. All right, now I'll get everybody just to themselves. Hold 2 fingers in front of your own eyes. Look at the front finger. Do you see one finger? Yes or no? Okay, keep looking at that front finger. How many fingers are you aware of in the background? Aha. So that's called physiological diplopia. That normal double vision. That helps us judge distances. Now look at the back finger. You see one finger? Yes. How many fingers in front are you aware of? There should be two. So that, again, that physiological double vision, we're not aware of it, we're not even thinking that we see double, but that's normal double vision. That helps us judge distances. So if there's an adult or a child who has one eye, not using two eyes, they have trouble with judging distances, walking up steps, catching a ball, picking up a salt or pepper shaker at the table without knocking something over, doing this. So that's very difficult for them to judge distances. So if someone's clumsy, is it the gross motor issues? Is it that they can't do it? Or is it that they don't have depth perception? So very important to have that checked out. We also look at colour vision. So about 1 in 8 men have a colour vision genetic defect. That's sort of, but it's important to know that, so teachers are aware that they have a colour vision problem and don't use colour necessarily to sort of as a teaching tool. And we also look at eye health. So it's not uncommon to find eye issues in the developmental disability population. Sometimes we find cataracts and sometimes we find corneal issues. So it's important to find out what are these obstacles that are there. So functional assessment is very important. So I spoke about the importance of depth perception. So two eyes working together. Strabismus, which is a squint or an eye turn, is where one eye turns in or one eye turns out. So it's more common in the Fragile X population, in the disabled population, to have binocular vision issues. So they might have an eye that turns in all of the time or some of the time. So in the normal, say, child population, it might be 2% of the population, but in the Fragile X community, it's 10 times that, it's 20%. So esotropia is when it turns in and exotropia is when it turns out. This is an example of a boy who has one eye that's turned in. Sometimes it can be helped with glasses, so they might be long-sighted and they need glasses to help them straighten the eyes. Sometimes it's a muscle issue and there needs to be exercises. In extreme cases, it might need surgery. So I spoke about the different types of glasses people might need. So if they need glasses to see for close up, they have trouble seeing for far away. That's short-sighted, myopia. Generally, they don't have too much problems with learning. It's the top one, which is long-sighted. So they see for far away, but they have to work so hard trying to keep something clear that they'll just avoid close work. So they avoid the learning aspect of it. So that needs to be addressed. So we need to always make sure that kids are tested early. So I always say before prep, definitely before prep. And if any of your adults have not had regular eye tests, just make sure that they have a check at least every 2 years. If they haven't worn glasses, that's fine, but just regular checkups. And then there's a thing called anisometropia, a difference between the two eyes. So one eye might be quite a bit different to the other. It might be more long-sighted or more short-sighted, or astigmatism. And that can also make the brain ignore the worse eye and have a lazy eye. So all of those things need to be addressed and maximised visual potential. There's another condition called nystagmus, which is wobbly eyes, which can be sometimes associated with an eye turn. It can be associated with neurological conditions. So again, we always want to make sure we assess that. So what do we do as optometrists? So we try and treat these conditions. So we can prescribe glasses. We can prescribe what's called prism. So if they have a muscle imbalance, sometimes we put prism in glasses. Sometimes we use, so prism actually moves things in the direction of a particular area. We can move things up or down. So say for example, even with postural issues, so I might see an autistic person whose head is down constantly. So I might put prism, what's called base down, and moves everything up. So they have to physically lift their head to see, so it moved their world up. So it actually physically moves, I actually physically move their head up with lenses. So there's little tricks we can do which we can help with posture as well as muscles. And tints help as well. So especially in the Fragile X population, they're so sensitive to smell, touch, noise. They're also sensitive to light. So flickering lights would be very annoying. Sunlight's annoying, so sometimes even just wearing sunglasses indoors with wraparounds, they feel quite protected. They might feel that they're more incognito and they quite like that. But if they need glasses, often putting transition lenses, so the ones that go darker outside and lighter inside, sort of can help them as well. Sometimes we need to do exercises to help them with either muscle problems or lazy eyes or convergence issues, so they have trouble turning in. So we would do games with them. It can be computer games, it can be other games. And we talk a bit about visual hygiene as well. So, you know, nowadays technology is huge, and we'd often sort of see people with their phones like this. And that's actually terrible for the eye. So anything up close is like marathon running for the eye. So we talk about putting things further away, making the font bigger, having a good posture, having a writing slope, in their work environment, making sure that they also have a good visual posture as well, so that they're managing well, that they're not getting eye strain and headaches, and good lighting. So if you're reading or writing or anything with work, the lighting should be from behind you. If you've got a light from this way going into your eyes, you get disability glare, and after a period of time you can get eye strain and headaches. So just being aware of the environment as well. So that's the functional assessment. Now there are times where we would be looking at the processing. So that's what's the brain doing with all that visual information. So that's, again, like speech therapy, like occupational therapy. The vision therapy and the visual processing aspect is we're looking at the developmental aspect of their vision. So if they have overall processing delay, they're probably going to have overall visual processing delay. So we look at things like right-left awareness. Do they know right-left on themselves? Do they know, can they project that into space? For example, let me ask you, at what age do you think a child would know right-left on themselves? So hands up, 4-year-old, 5-year-old, 6-year-old, 7-year-old. Yep, so probably by 6, 7, we sort of expect them to know right, left on themselves. By the time they're 8, 9, they're already projecting into space. So we expect a 6-year-old to know some right, left, but they would get some reversals of letters and numbers, but probably by 8 and 9 we expect a lot less, and by 10 a lot less. Adults who are still getting, you know, if they can write their name, if they're flipping the letters or numbers, they might have visual spatial issues, and so there are games we can do to try and help that increase their spatial awareness. We look at, and again with the OT, visual motor skills, we look at visual memory, eye movement, and visual auditory integration. I spoke a bit about visual spatial skills. Visual motor is, you know, looking at this and copying it, or drawing and writing, or catching a ball. So anything that you're looking and doing something with your hands, you know, gluing, any sort of task that they're using their hands and their eyes for. Visual auditory is listening to sounds and manipulating them. So like, you know, say cat, where's the k, is it in the beginning? So the speech therapist would be doing a lot of that. We do the visual aspect of that. Visual memory skills. So with recognising sight words, which these guys actually are very good at because they're Gestalt learners. They will recognise the whole word, but we can also help them. They like visual cues with that, so they want pictures with that. So that's one of their strengths, but we would be sort of measuring what they're able to do. Eye movement skills, so are they able to follow a ball? Are they able to, if they read a sentence, can they follow each word and not lose their spot? So that's got a lot of visual attention. It's related very much to general attention. So if there's a lot on the page, they would be having a lot of visual distraction. So sometimes we say put a blank page under it, use their finger initially, and we can train all those sort of skills later on to improve it, that we eventually don't need the finger, that we don't need that page. But they're very much affected by visual distraction as well. So in a room, we'll say don't have too much clutter in the room. If you want them to attend to the board, don't have everything around it so they're not being distracted by other things in the room. Again, we find a range of results. So if someone is severely affected by Fragile X and perhaps is non-verbal and not able to recognise any letters or words or the stop signs, they might have a very low visual processing skill. Or, you know, some people who are very high functioning are able to read a book, they would have quite good visual processing skills. So we get a score and we're able to improve the area that is difficult for them, and we use their strengths as well. So for an example, someone, a 20-year-old has scored perhaps at a 4-year-old level, whereas a 5-year-old, a female, has scored at an almost 5-year-old level. So you get a whole range of scores depending on the severity of the disability of the Fragile X syndrome. I'll talk about sort of reading requirements. So we heard from Loretta that she loves reading, you know, so that's great. So a lot of Fragile X girls and some boys are actually able to read well. Some can read primary novels, some can even read secondary, some can read magazines, some like looking at pictures, so comics and things. So I always suggest you can always improve on what you've got, it doesn't matter what age. So just because someone's not at school doesn't mean that you cannot improve on their literacy skills, on their skills of developing everything really, because neuroplasticity is all your life. So there are different ways to improve skills. So what do they need for reading? They have to be able to have good vision. They have to be able to focus, keep things clear up close without getting tired. They need visual attention so that not be distracted by things around them. They have to be able to hop from word to word, that's called saccades, and not lose their spot. They have to be able to look at the word and decode the word. So it's quite a complex task. They have to be able to look at a sight word, remember what that is, take it out of their filing bank and say, oh, that's that sight word. And with the phonetic stuff, they have to have that good visual auditory integration. So when you think about reading, there's a lot of areas that are needed to be able to read well. They have to know their alphabet, their phonics, sight words, fluency. So there are various different programs. Here are some examples. So there's Reading Eggs. There's Marsha Braden, who's this wonderful special ed and psychology expert from the States. She's got various books out, and I would suggest using her resources. And there's the nationalfragilex.org site. As a neurodevelopmental optometrist, I offer an intervention called vision therapy, like speech therapy, like occupational therapy. It's designed to try and improve the area of visual processing, to improve or decrease the lag and improve the skills where they're at. So we design exercises to try and get them to improve those skills, but you do need someone to be the therapist at home. So that's the commitment. It can be a helper, it can be a support worker, it can be a parent, but you can improve these skills, but you do need someone to do it with them. They can't just do it by themselves. So we do in-office therapy as well as home-based therapy. Again, there are various visual processing programs, but again, you do need, it would be best to be done under some of these under supervision, and you would need someone to do these with the person. We did what's called the Dynamic Reader program with Michael last year to improve his eye movement skills, and it's basically going through stories that start even from grade 1 prep level. So you have to have a basic decoding skill. So you have to know, it doesn't teach you how to decode words, so you have to have some word skills to start off with, but it improves your fluency, so how quickly you're able to read, how efficiently you're able to read, and it does it in a very systematic, very slow, methodical method. So again, it's a computer-based program. It tells you how many words per minute you're reading. If you're making too many mistakes, it goes slower. When you reach a certain goal, it goes 5 words per minute faster. So it's a very systematic way of improving reading fluency. So in conclusion, I think it's really important for everybody, not just people with Fragile X, but everybody should have regular checks, regular eye checks. And the Fragile X population, because they tend to have more problems with their eyes, definitely regular eye checks at least every 2 years. So functional assessment, and sometimes it might be worthwhile just doing a perceptual assessment to see where they're at developmentally. It's important to remove sensory obstacles to learning. Life is hard enough without them having blurry vision for close work, and you're wanting them to do computer work or a task that they cannot see. One of their skills is they have a very strong visual discrimination. So they notice when things are different. They notice when things are wrong. So you could use this as a strength. So, for example, Michael, if we ever lose anything, we go, Michael, where's the necklace? So my daughter once dropped a black necklace in the sand at night time. We said, where is it? He goes, oh, there it is. And no one could see it, but he's aware of differences. So if you've moved something in the room, they will know about it. vision therapy is an important tool to help with management. We're wanting to improve their visual processing skills to help them manage in the environment. And it can help with reading, writing and spelling and the workforce. I thought I may as well just keep you awake, perhaps just with one example of one of the vision therapy exercises. So this is one called Kirschner arrow chart. So this optometrist likes to name them after himself. So we might wake you up by everybody standing up now. So you're going to point? Yeah. So you guys are going to read from the very top row. The arrows are going to be up, down, right or left. So if it's up, you're just going to put both hands up and say up. If it's down, you put both hands down. If it's right, you're just going to point, I'll do it for you. If it's right, you're going to point to your right and say right. And if it's left, you're going to point to the left and say left. Now, normally we'd be doing a lot of jumping, but I think it will be a bit of an health and safety issue here. So Michael's going to start by helping you, and we're going to start pretty slowly. So we'll start off just with the first line. So we're going to go. Good. Left. Now Michael's going to do one more row with you. Now Michael's not going to help you with this one. You're going to do the next row, and I'm going to go a little bit faster with my clapping, so you're going to do it a little bit faster. Row number 3 now. Keep going. Keep going. Last one. Give yourself a clap. Well done.